I stared at my mother across the mahogany table, her manicured nails drumming impatiently against the wood, and felt the phantom pain of everything that was about to happen. Everything that had already happened. Everything I died from. "Rachel, you're being unreasonable," she said. Her voice, that perfect blend of disappointment and controlled anger I'd heard 1,000 times before. In another life. In my first life. Daniel made one mistake. One, you can't destroy his career over one mistake. One mistake. That's what she'd called it then, too. When Daniel had shown up drunk at my apartment at 2 in the morning, kicked in my door, and put his hands around my throat until I saw stars. When my neighbors called the police and I'd pressed charges with bruised fingerprints still visible on my neck. When the judge had granted me a restraining order and Daniel's law firm had quietly suggested he take a leave of absence. One mistake. I was 28 years old and I was living the same 3 months for the second time. I'd woken up 6 weeks ago in my old apartment, the one before Daniel, before the marriage, before everything, with my heart hammering and my phone showing a date I'd already lived through. March 15th, the day Daniel would ask me to dinner for the first time. I'd spent those 6 weeks in a haze of disbelief and then grim, crystalline clarity. I'd avoided him completely, changed my routine, blocked his number. I thought I could prevent it all by simply never meeting him. But the universe, or fate, or whatever cruel force had given me this second chance, had other plans. 3 weeks ago, he'd rear-ended my car at a stoplight. Fate, he'd called it, that dazzling smile already in place. I'd driven away without giving him my number, but he'd found me anyway. He always found me. This time, when he showed up at my apartment uninvited after I'd refused a third date, when he wouldn't leave, when his friendly persistence turned to angry insistence, I'd called the police immediately. I didn't try to de-escalate. I didn't worry about his feelings or his reputation. I'd already died once for those concerns. The restraining order had been granted 4 days ago. And now my family sat around me in my parents' dining room, my mother, my father, my older brother James, with Daniel's parents and his sister across from them. 6 people who loved me, supposedly. 6 people who would rather sacrifice me than endure discomfort. "He's about to make partner at the firm," Daniel's mother, Patricia, added, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "This will ruin everything he's worked for. Is that really what you want?" I wanted to laugh. In my first life, I'd folded here. I'd felt the weight of their disappointment, their implication that I was being vindictive, that I was overreacting. I'd dropped the restraining order. Daniel had thanked me with flowers and that apologetic smile. 2 weeks later, he broke into my apartment again. 1 month later, I agreed to try again under pressure from both our families. 6 months later, we were engaged. A year later, married. 18 months after that, I was dead. "What I want," I said slowly, meeting my mother's eyes, "is to not be murdered." The room went silent. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. James shifted in his seat. "Rachel," Patricia said, her voice sharp now, the tears gone. "That's incredibly dramatic. Daniel would never—" He put his hands around my throat. I touched my neck where the bruises had faded weeks ago. The police report documents injuries consistent with strangulation. The legal definition of attempted murder in this state requires proof of intent, which is why he was only charged with assault. But strangulation is the #1 predictor of domestic homicide. Women who have been strangled by their partners are 7 times more likely to be killed by those partners. I'd looked up the statistics this time. I'd educated myself. I'd built my case. "One mistake," my mother repeated, but her voice was weaker now. "You keep saying that." I stood up, gathering my purse. "So, let me be clear. I'm not dropping the restraining order. Not for his career. Not for your comfort. Not to keep the peace. He stays 500 feet away from me, or he goes to jail. Those are his options." "Rachel, sit down," my father commanded. "We're not finished discussing this." "Yes," I said, walking toward the door. "We are." My brother caught up with me in the hallway. "Rachel, wait, just think about this. You're making enemies of everyone. Mom and Dad are already talking about cutting you out of the will. The Brennans are threatening to sue you for defamation. Is this really worth losing your whole family over?" I looked at James, remembering how he'd given a speech at my funeral, how he'd cried, how he'd said he wished he'd done more. I already lost my family, I said. The day you all chose him over me, I just didn't know it yet. I left him standing there and walked out into the cool spring evening. My hands were shaking, but my resolve wasn't. I'd done it. I'd refused. Everything would be different now. I didn't know yet how right I was. The first violation happened 3 days later. Daniel showed up at my office. I was a graphic designer at a small marketing firm downtown, and our office had an open reception area. I was walking back from the bathroom when I saw him through the glass door talking to Melissa at the front desk. My heart seized. The restraining order meant he couldn't come within 500 feet of my home, my workplace, or anywhere I was known to frequent. He was standing 20 feet from my desk. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and dialed 911. He looks upset, Melissa was saying as I approached, her voice concerned. Maybe you should... Rachel, your ex is here. I know, I said, keeping my distance, keeping the reception desk between us. Hi, I need to report a restraining order. Violation. 4 and 47 Market Street, 3rd floor. He's here now. Daniel's face went from pleading to angry in an instant. Rachel, don't be ridiculous. I just need 5 minutes. 5 minutes to talk to you. That's all I'm asking. You're violating a court order, I said, my voice steady despite my hammering heart. In my first life, I'd have been embarrassed. I'd have worried about making a scene, about what my coworkers thought. Now I knew that embarrassment was a small price for survival. The police are on their way. You need to leave. This is insane. He slammed his hand on the reception desk, making Melissa jump. You're treating me like a criminal over one argument, I finished. One bad night, one mistake. That's how you describe assaulting me? My coworkers were emerging from their offices now, drawn by the commotion. My boss, Martin, stepped forward. Sir, you need to leave now. Stay out of this, Daniel snapped. Rachel, please, just drop this restraining order bullshit and talk to me like an adult. No. His face went red. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? I'm on administrative leave. My colleagues look at me like I'm a monster. My mother won't stop crying. All because you assaulted me, I said again. All because you put your hands around my throat and squeezed until I couldn't breathe? Yes, Daniel, that tends to have consequences. The elevator dinged. 2 police officers stepped out. I'd never been so grateful to see a uniform in my life. That's him, I said, pointing. That's Daniel Brennan. I have a restraining order against him, and he came to my workplace. The officers approached Daniel, who immediately changed tactics. His shoulders slumped. His voice went soft and reasonable. Officers, there's been a misunderstanding. I just came here to talk to my fiancé. Ex-fiancé? I interrupted. We've never been engaged. About dropping this ridiculous restraining order. I didn't realize coming to her workplace counted as a violation. I thought it was just her home. One of the officers, a woman with steel gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, gave him a flat look. The restraining order specifies her workplace. It's in the document you were served. I don't remember. Sir, turn around and put your hands behind your back. Daniel's eyes went wide. Wait, you're arresting me? For what? Violating a restraining order. The officer pulled out her handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. I watched as they cuffed him, as they led him to the elevator, as he craned his neck to look back at me with an expression of pure hatred. In my first life, I'd never seen that look. He'd been so good at hiding it, so skilled at playing the remorseful boyfriend, the misunderstood romantic, the guy who just loved me too much. Now the mask was cracking. Are you okay? Martin asked once they were gone. I nodded, realizing I was shaking. Yeah, I'm okay. Take the rest of the day, he said. Take tomorrow too if you need it. But I didn't need it. For the first time in months, in 2 lifetimes, I felt like I could breathe. He made bail within 6 hours. His parents paid it, of course, $20,000. Pocket change for the Brennans, who owned 3 car dealerships and a vacation home in Aspen. My mother called me that evening. I hope you're satisfied. Not yet, I said. But I'm getting there. He was arrested, Rachel, at his ex-girlfriend's workplace. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is for his family? Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to have your own mother advocate for your abuser? Silence, then. Don't call me until you're ready to apologize. She hung up. I stared at my phone, waiting for the hurt to come. It didn't. Or maybe it was just buried under the bigger hurt, the older hurt, the one from my first life where my mother hadn't come to my funeral because she was too upset. James had told me that detail during one of his drunken reminiscences. He hadn't meant for it to slip out, but it had, and I'd carried it with me to my grave. No, not to my grave. Back from my grave. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I'd been documenting everything since I'd woken up in my old life. Every interaction with Daniel, every message, every call. I'd kept the flowers he'd sent after I got the restraining order. The card had said, "I'm sorry for everything. Please give me another chance." I'd screenshotted every text, every email, every social media message. And now I had his first violation on record. I created a new folder on my desktop. Evidence. I uploaded the police report, the arrest record, photos I'd taken of him in my office before the police arrived. I backed everything up to 3 different cloud services. In my first life, I'd been unprepared. I'd trusted the legal system to protect me, trusted my family to support me, trusted Daniel to stay away once I'd made it clear we were done. I'd trusted, and I'd died for it. This time, I was building a paper trail that would bury him. The court date for the violation was set for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Daniel's lawyer filed a motion to dismiss the original restraining order, arguing that it was based on an exaggerated account of a minor domestic dispute and that my refusal to drop it was causing his client significant professional and personal harm. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Karen Rothstein, who specialized in domestic violence cases, called me into her office. "They're going to argue that you're vindictive," she said, sliding the motion across her desk, "that you're using the legal system to punish him for breaking up with you." "We were never dating," I said. "I went on 2 dates with him, then he assaulted me." "I know that. You know that. The police report knows that. But they're going to try to muddy the waters. They'll bring in character witnesses, people who'll say Daniel is an upstanding citizen, that this is all a misunderstanding." She leaned back in her chair. "How prepared are you for this to get ugly?" I thought about my death, about Daniel's hands around my throat in our kitchen, squeezing and squeezing while he cried and told me he loved me, about lying on the cold tile floor, my vision going dark, my lungs burning, about the police finding me 3 days later after my boss reported me missing. "I'm prepared," I said. Karen studied me for a long moment. "Okay, then let's win this." The hearing was held in a small courtroom with fluorescent lights and tired-looking carpet. Daniel sat with his lawyer, a silver-haired man in a suit that probably cost more than my car. He looked respectable, subdued, every inch the wronged party. I sat with Karen and tried not to throw up. My parents weren't there, neither was James. Daniel's entire family was, though, his parents, his sister, his aunt and uncle, a show of support, a show of force. The judge, a middle-aged black woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, called the court to order. "We're here regarding case number 2024-CV8847, Rachel Morrison versus Daniel Brennan. The petitioner has requested a continuation of a temporary restraining order, while the respondent has filed a motion to dismiss. We'll also be addressing the alleged violation of the temporary order. Mr. Coleman, you may proceed." Daniel's lawyer stood, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, my client is a young man with no prior criminal record, a promising career, and deep ties to this community. The restraining order against him is based on a single incident, an argument between 2 people who were dating, that has been blown entirely out of proportion." "They weren't dating," Karen said, not standing. "Ms. Morrison went on 2 dates with Mr. Brennan and then declined to see him again. He showed up at her apartment uninvited, refused to leave, and assaulted her when she tried to call for help." "An argument that got heated," Coleman countered, "for which my client has expressed deep remorse." "He made a mistake, Your Honor. One mistake. and Ms. Morrison is using the legal system to destroy his life over it. Judge Harrison looked at me. Ms. Morrison, can you describe what happened the night of the incident? I stood, my legs shaky, but my voice clear. This was the moment where I'd failed in my first life. Daniel and I went on 2 dates, I said. I wasn't interested in continuing the relationship, and I told him so. He kept texting me, calling me, showing up at places he knew I'd be. When I blocked his number, he created new numbers to contact me from. On March 28th, he came to my apartment at 11 p.m. I didn't let him in, but he wouldn't leave. He pounded on my door for 20 minutes, yelling that we needed to talk. When I called 911, he kicked in my door. That's not, Daniel started, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm. When he came in, I tried to get to my bedroom to lock myself in. He grabbed me. I tried to fight him off, and he put his hands around my throat and squeezed until I couldn't breathe. My neighbor heard the commotion and called the police. When they arrived, I had visible bruising on my neck and a broken door. Your Honor, the police report supports Ms. Morrison's account, Karen added. Officers documented injuries consistent with strangulation, as well as property damage. Mr. Brennan was arrested and charged with assault. A charge that was reduced to a misdemeanor as part of a plea deal, Coleman said quickly, because the prosecution didn't believe they could prove anything more serious. The charge was reduced because Mr. Brennan's family hired an expensive lawyer, Karen shot back, and because Ms. Morrison at that time was being pressured by both families to minimize what happened. Judge Harrison held up a hand. Let's address the violation first. Mr. Brennan, you're aware of the terms of the restraining order? Daniel stood and his lawyer stood with him. Yes, Your Honor. Then explain to me why you went to Ms. Morrison's workplace on April 14th. Daniel swallowed hard. I thought we could talk. I thought if I could just explain, she'd understand that I never meant to hurt her. I love her, Your Honor. I was trying to fix things. By violating a court order? I wasn't thinking clearly. Judge Harrison looked at him over her glasses. Mr. Brennan, a restraining order is not a suggestion. It's not a guideline. It's a legal mandate. When you were served with this order, you acknowledged understanding its terms. Those terms specifically prohibit you from going within 500 feet of Ms. Morrison's workplace, yet you walked into her office. Why? Daniel's lawyer leaned in, whispering something. Daniel's jaw clenched. I wanted to convince her to drop the order by intimidating her at her place of employment. No, I wasn't trying to intimidate her. I was trying to talk to her. Did Ms. Morrison want to talk to you? Silence. Mr. Brennan, did Ms. Morrison express any interest in speaking with you? No, he admitted, his voice tight. Did she call the police the moment she saw you? Yes. And when the police arrived, did you leave voluntarily or did they have to arrest you? His face went red. They arrested me. Judge Harrison made a note. Ms. Rothstein, your client has requested the temporary restraining order be made permanent and expanded. What are you asking for? Karen stood. Your Honor, Ms. Morrison is asking for a 5-year restraining order that prohibits Mr. Brennan from contacting her in any way. No phone calls, no texts, no emails, no social media contact, no third-party contact. He is to stay at least 500 feet away from her home, her workplace, her gym, her regular grocery store, and any location where she is present. Any violation should result in immediate arrest and prosecution. Your Honor, that's excessive, Coleman protested. My client has already demonstrated remorse. He's in therapy. He's taking anger management classes. A 5-year restraining order will destroy his career and his reputation. His career and reputation aren't my concern, Judge Harrison said coolly. Ms. Morrison's safety is. Mr. Brennan, I'm issuing a permanent restraining order for 5 years. You are to have no contact with Ms. Morrison whatsoever. If you see her in public, you turn around and go the other direction. If you're at an event and she arrives, you leave. If you violate this order again, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Do you understand? Daniel's face had gone from red to white. Your Honor, do you understand? Yes, he forced out. As for the violation that occurred on April 14th, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for prosecution. Bailiff, please provide Mr. Brennan with the information for his mandatory court appearance." She banged her gavel. "This hearing is adjourned." I stood there, dizzy with relief and disbelief. Karen was shaking my hand, saying something about how well it went. Daniel was talking furiously with his lawyer, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. As we left the courtroom, I felt his eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I'd won the first battle. The calls from my family started that night. First James, then my father, then my mother. I didn't answer. I knew what they'd say. I'd heard it all before in another life. I was being difficult. I was destroying a young man's future over a misunderstanding. I was embarrassing the family. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with texts. "Mom, answer your phone. We need to talk." "James, you're making a huge mistake. The Brennans are furious." "Dad, call your mother, now." I turned off my phone and listened to the sounds of the city, cars honking, people laughing somewhere in the distance, life going on indifferent to my small victory. In my first life, I'd felt guilty. I'd believed them when they said I was overreacting. I'd dropped the restraining order, and Daniel had thanked me with flowers and apologies and promises he never kept. 6 months later, we were engaged. He proposed at a family dinner with both sets of parents there, and I felt too cornered to say no. My mother had cried with happiness. His mother had hugged me and welcomed me to the family. The wedding was beautiful. I wore my grandmother's pearls. Daniel cried when I walked down the aisle. On our honeymoon in Bali, he slapped me for the first time. I'd been looking at a waiter too long, apparently. Smiling too much. Asking for it. I didn't tell anyone when we got home. I was ashamed. I was confused. The Daniel who hit me didn't match the Daniel who brought me flowers and told me I was beautiful. But the hits kept coming, and then came the shoves, the insults, the control. I couldn't see friends without his permission. I couldn't work. He made me quit my job because he said I was flirting with my coworkers. I couldn't have my own bank account because he needed to make sure I wasn't wasting our money. The first time he choked me, I packed a bag and left. I went to my parents' house. My mother took one look at me, the bruises, the terror, and called Daniel. He came to get me. He cried and apologized. He promised it would never happen again. My mother told me that marriage was work, that all couples fought, that I needed to try harder to not provoke him. I went home with him. 2 months later, he killed me in our kitchen over a pot roast that was too dry. I'd relived that night 1,000 times since waking up in my old life. The way he'd come home from work already angry about something. The way he'd thrown the plate against the wall when he took his first bite. The way I'd tried to apologize, to diffuse, to make myself smaller. The way he'd grabbed me by the throat and slammed me against the refrigerator. The way he'd squeezed. The way everything had gone dark. And then I'd woken up 6 weeks earlier in my old apartment with a second chance. I wasn't going to waste it. The district attorney's office called me a week later. The prosecutor assigned to Daniel's case was a young man named Marcus Chen, with tired eyes and a patient voice. "Ms. Morrison, I've reviewed the police report from the restraining order violation. I want to be upfront with you about what we're facing here. Mr. Brennan has no prior criminal record. He's a lawyer from a well-connected family, and his attorney is going to argue that this was an isolated lapse in judgment." "He assaulted me," I said. "Then he violated a restraining order meant to protect me from him. That's not a lapse in judgment. That's a pattern." "I agree with you," Marcus said. "But convincing a jury is another matter. I need you to be prepared for this to go to trial. His lawyer is already floating the idea of a plea deal, community service, maybe a fine, no jail time." "No," I said immediately. "No plea deal. Ms. Morrison, he needs to face consequences, real consequences. If he walks away from this with community service, he'll just do it again." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Have you had previous incidents with Mr. Brennan beyond what's in the police report?" I thought about my first life, about all the times he'd violated boundaries, ignored my no, pushed and pushed until I gave in. But I couldn't tell Marcus about that. He'd think I was crazy. "I know him," I said instead. "I know how he thinks. If you let him off easy, he won't stop. He'll just get better at hiding it." Okay, Marcus said slowly. Then we'll push for jail time. But I need you to be strong. His attorney is going to come after your credibility. They're going to paint you as vindictive, as a woman who's trying to ruin his life over a failed relationship. Let them try, I said. The trial was set for June, 2 months away. In the meantime, I tried to live my life. I went to work, I saw friends, I went to therapy, a new therapist, one I'd found on my own, who specialized in trauma. Dr. Sarah Winters was in her 50s with kind eyes and a way of asking questions that made me feel heard rather than interrogated. Tell me about the restraining order, she said during our third session. I told her everything. The dates, the assault, the violation, my family's reaction. I didn't tell her about dying and coming back. That would land me in a psychiatric hospital rather than a therapist's office. How are you feeling about your family's response? She asked. Angry, I said immediately. They chose him over me. They've always chosen everyone over me. Always? I thought about my childhood. My mother criticizing my weight, my career choice, my apartment, my clothes, my father's distance, his focus on James, the son who could carry on the family name. My brother's dismissiveness, his assumption that I was being dramatic whenever I expressed hurt or anger. They've never really seen me, I said. They see the version of me they want to see. The compliant daughter, the peacekeeper, the one who doesn't make waves. And who do you see when you look at yourself? Dr. Winters asked. I looked down at my hands. In my first life, I'd have said I saw someone weak, someone who couldn't stand up for herself, someone who deserved what she got, but I'd died, and I'd come back, and I'd changed the story. I see someone who's done being compliant, I said. Dr. Winter smiled. Good. Daniel didn't stay away. In mid-May, a month before the trial, I started noticing things. My apartment building had a parking garage, and my car was always in the same spot. One morning, I found a bouquet of white roses on my windshield with a note. I'm sorry, please forgive me. No signature, but I knew Daniel's handwriting. I took photos, collected the note in a plastic bag, and called Marcus Chen. He's not supposed to contact you at all, Marcus said, his voice tight with anger. This is another violation. Can we prove it was him? I asked. There's no signature. We can try. I'll talk to the police about pulling security footage from your building. The roses were followed by other things. A coffee from my favorite shop left at my office reception with my name on it. A book I'd mentioned wanting to read, delivered to my apartment with no return address. A text from an unknown number. I know you still love me. We can fix this. Each time I documented it. Photos, screenshots, witness statements from coworkers and neighbors. I was building a case, brick by brick. He's escalating, Dr. Winters said when I told her. This is a common pattern with abusers. When they lose control, they try harder to regain it. First with love bombing, gifts, apologies, and then with threats. What kind of threats? I asked, even though I already knew. I'd lived through them. Threats to himself, threats to you, threats to harm himself if you don't take him back. The message is always the same. You're responsible for my actions. You have the power to make this stop by giving me what I want. The threats came a week later. I woke up to 47 missed calls and 89 text messages from different numbers, all from Daniel. You're ruining my life. I've lost everything because of you. My firm let me go. I hope you're happy. My parents won't even look at me. This is all your fault. I loved you and you destroyed me. If something happens to me, it's on you. I can't live without you. I'm going to make you understand what you've done. The messages went on, cycling between self-pity and rage. I screenshotted every single one and sent them to Marcus. He called me within an hour. Rachel, I need you to take this seriously. These messages suggest he might be planning to harm himself or you. I'm going to request an emergency hearing to revoke his bail and have him taken into custody until the trial. Will that work? I asked. I don't know, he admitted, but we have to try. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the next day. I sat in the same courthouse in the same tired room with the same judge. Daniel wasn't there. His lawyer stood alone, looking harried. Your Honor, my client is currently under psychiatric care, Coleman said. He's been under enormous stress, and he had a mental health crisis. The messages were sent during a manic episode. He deeply regrets them. Deeply regrets harassing Ms. Morrison with nearly 90 threatening text messages? Judge Harrison's voice was ice. Where is your client, Mr. Coleman? He's been admitted to Riverside Psychiatric Hospital for a 72-hour hold. His doctors felt he was a danger to himself. But not a danger to Ms. Morrison? Coleman hesitated. He's receiving treatment, Your Honor. Judge Harrison looked at the stack of screenshots Marcus had submitted. Mr. Brennan has now violated the restraining order multiple times. He's sent gifts, messages, and threats. He's demonstrated a complete disregard for this court's authority. When he's released from psychiatric care, he's to be taken into custody immediately. Bail is revoked. Coleman's face went pale. Your Honor, that's my ruling. This man is a threat, and Ms. Morrison's safety is paramount. We're done here. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt dread. I knew Daniel. I'd been married to him, lived with him, died by his hand, and I knew that backing him into a corner wouldn't make him surrender. It would make him desperate. 3 days later, he was released from the hospital. The police were supposed to pick him up and transport him to jail to await trial. But when they arrived, he was gone. He'd walked out of the hospital that morning and disappeared. An arrest warrant was issued. His face was on the news. Local attorney wanted for violating restraining order. His parents released a statement asking him to turn himself in. The police watched my apartment, my workplace, anywhere he might go looking for me. But Daniel was smart. He'd graduated top of his class from law school. He knew how to disappear. I stopped sleeping. Every sound in my apartment made me jump. I installed extra locks on my doors, kept my phone charged and close, slept with a baseball bat next to my bed. Dr. Winters recommended I stay with a friend. I went to stay with my coworker, Julia, who had a spare room and a very large, very protective German shepherd named Bear. How long is this going to go on? Julia asked over wine one night. I don't know, I said honestly. Until they find him, or until... I didn't finish the sentence. Until he finds me. Until this ends the way it ended before, but I was ready this time. I had my phone on me always. I had a panic button app that would alert the police and send my location. I had pepper spray in my purse, my car, my desk drawer. I'd taken a self-defense class. In my first life, I'd been a victim. In this life, I refused to be. He came for me on a Tuesday. I was leaving work late. I'd been putting in extra hours on a project, trying to keep my mind occupied. The parking garage was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered across the dimly lit levels. My car was on the 3rd floor, in my usual spot near the elevator. I had my keys out, my finger on the panic button app, my eyes scanning the shadows. I was almost to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around. Daniel stood 10 feet away, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were rumpled, his hair unwashed, his eyes red-rimmed and wild. "Rachel," he said, and his voice cracked. "Finally, I've been waiting for you." My thumb hit the panic button. "The police are on their way. You need to leave." "I'm not leaving until you listen to me." He took a step forward. I took a step back, putting my car between us. "You've ruined everything. Everything. Do you understand that? I lost my job. My family won't talk to me. I'm going to jail because of you." "You're going to jail because you violated a restraining order," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Because you can't take no for an answer. Because you're dangerous." "I'm not dangerous," he screamed, and the sound echoed off the concrete walls. "I love you. I've always loved you. We were supposed to be together." "We were never together," I said. "We went on 2 dates. I said I wasn't interested. You assaulted me. That's not love, Daniel. That's obsession." He was crying now, tears streaming down his face. "You don't understand. You don't understand what you mean to me. I can't live without you." "Yes, you can. You just don't want to." He lunged forward and I ran. I got in my car and locked the doors just as he reached the handle. He pounded on the window, screaming, "Open the door! Open the fucking door!" I started the engine. He threw himself against the car, trying to block me. I reversed, my heart in my throat, and he stumbled backward. In my rearview mirror, I saw him pull something from his jacket, a gun. Time seemed to slow down. I saw him raise it, saw his face twisted in rage and desperation. I ducked as the window shattered, glass spraying everywhere. The bullet hit the headrest where my head had been a second before. I slammed on the gas and drove straight at him. He dove out of the way, and I sped toward the exit, glass crunching under my tires, my whole body shaking. Behind me, I heard sirens. The panic button had worked. The police were here. But Daniel was running, disappearing into the stairwell, and I knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't over. They caught him 4 hours later. He'd gone to my apartment building, Julia's apartment building now, where I'd been staying. The police had officers stationed there, waiting for him. When Daniel tried to break in through a back entrance, they arrested him. This time, there was no bail. This time, the charges were attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, stalking, and multiple counts of violating a restraining order. This time, they had him on video. The parking garage cameras had caught everything. Him waiting for me, him pulling the gun, him firing. Marcus Chen called me at the hospital where I was being treated for minor cuts from the glass. "We've got him," he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. "He's not getting out. We're pushing for the maximum sentence on all charges." "How long?" I asked. "With the attempted murder charge? 20 years minimum, maybe more." I closed my eyes. 20 years. He'd be almost 50 when he got out. I'd be almost 50, a lifetime away. But I knew from experience that sometimes men like Daniel got out early. Good behavior, parole, overcrowded prisons. "Make sure it sticks," I said. "Please, make sure it sticks." The trial happened in August. It took 4 days. Daniel's lawyer tried everything. He claimed Daniel was mentally ill, that he'd been driven to desperation by my false accusations, that the gun went off accidentally. He painted Daniel as a sympathetic figure, a young man whose life had been destroyed by a vindictive ex-girlfriend. But the evidence was overwhelming. The videos, the messages, the police reports, my testimony, and the testimony of witnesses, my co-workers, my neighbors, the officers who'd arrested him, the bullet hole in my car. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. I gave a victim impact statement, standing at a podium while Daniel sat 20 feet away in handcuffs and a prison jumpsuit. "When I met Daniel Brennan, I thought he was charming," I said, my voice echoing in the silent courtroom. "Thought he was successful and confident. I didn't realize until it was too late that his confidence was actually entitlement. His charm was manipulation. His interest in me was obsession." I looked directly at him. He stared back, his face blank. When I said I didn't want to date him, he didn't hear no. He heard, "Try harder." When I got a restraining order, he didn't see consequences. He saw an obstacle to overcome. When I went to the police, when I went to court, when I documented everything he did, he still didn't stop. Because in his mind, my autonomy doesn't matter. My safety doesn't matter. My life doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what he wants. My hands were shaking. Karen put a hand on my shoulder. "He tried to kill me," I said. "He fired a gun at me in a parking garage because I wouldn't take him back. And I know that if he's given the chance, he'll try again. Because men like Daniel don't stop. They escalate, they adapt, they wait." I took a breath. "I'm asking this court to give him the maximum sentence. Not because I want revenge, but because I want to live. I want to live without fear. I want to go to work without checking my back seat. I want to sleep without nightmares. I want to exist in the world as a person, not as a target." I sat down. Daniel's lawyer stood up for his own statement, but I stopped listening. I'd said what I needed to say. Judge Harrison sentenced him to 25 years, 5 years for each restraining order violation, 10 years for assault with a deadly weapon, 20 years for attempted murder, with some sentences running concurrently. 25 years total. He'd be 53 when he got out. I'd be 53. It wasn't life, but it was enough. My mother called me after the sentencing. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Rachel," she said, and her voice was small. "I saw the news." "Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't realize that he tried to kill me? That he fired a gun at me?" My voice was hard. "What did you think would happen, Mom? When you told me to drop the restraining order? When you chose his comfort over my safety? What did you think the outcome would be?" She was crying. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know you are," I said. "But sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give me back the sleep I've lost or the months of fear or the knowledge that my own family would sacrifice me to avoid awkwardness with the neighbors. That's not. It is, though. It is exactly what you did. And I can forgive you eventually, maybe. But I can't forget. And I can't trust you. Not with anything that matters. Rachel, please. I need to go, I said, and hung up. I turned off my phone and sat in my car outside the courthouse. Karen had offered to take me for a drink to celebrate, but I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt wrung out, emptied, like I'd just finished running a marathon. But I'd won. I'd survived. I'd changed my fate. Life moved on. Stayed at Julia's for another month, then moved to a new apartment across town. Fresh start, new neighborhood, no memories. I got a new car. The old one was evidence, impounded until the trial was over, and even after I got it back, I couldn't stand to drive it. Too many nightmares. Work was good. Martin gave me a raise and a promotion, senior designer, with my own office and more responsibility. I threw myself into it, working long hours, taking on new clients, building a portfolio I was proud of. I made new friends. I went on a few dates, carefully, cautiously, always with a background check first. I wasn't ready for anything serious, but it was nice to remember what normal dating looked like. Coffee, dinner, a movie, no stalking, no violence, just normal. My family reached out occasionally. James sent texts every few weeks trying to rebuild what we'd had. My father sent a stiff email saying he hoped I was doing well. My mother sent cards, birthday, Christmas, Easter, with long handwritten notes about how sorry she was, how much she regretted her actions, how she hoped I'd forgive her someday. I read them. I didn't respond, not yet. Maybe not ever. Dr. Winters helped me work through the anger, the betrayal, the complicated grief of losing your family while they're still alive. You don't owe them forgiveness, she said. Forgiveness is something you give when you're ready, if you're ready. It's not something they can demand. I keep thinking about the other version, I said. The timeline where I dropped the restraining order, where I married him, where I died. It was the closest I'd come to telling her the truth, that I'd lived that timeline, that I died in it. But you didn't, she said gently. You made different choices. You survived. Because I knew what would happen if I didn't. Does it matter why you survived? You did. You're here. That's what counts. I wanted to believe her. Some days I did. A year after the sentencing, I got a letter from Daniel. It was forwarded through the district attorney's office. He wasn't allowed to contact me directly, but victims could receive letters through official channels if they chose to. Marcus called to ask if I wanted it. What does it say? I asked. I haven't read it. It's sealed, but you don't have to read it if you don't want to. I can send it back or destroy it. I thought about it for a long time. The smart thing, the healthy thing, was to say no, to refuse to engage, to let him fade into the past where he belonged. But I was curious, and I'd learned that pretending things didn't exist didn't make them go away. Send it, I said. The letter arrived 3 days later. I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine, staring at the envelope for 10 minutes before opening it. Rachel, I've been here for a year now, and I've had a lot of time to think. The therapist they assigned me says I need to take accountability for my actions. She says I need to understand the harm I caused. I'm not sure I can. I'm not sure I even know how. When I think about what happened, it all feels like a dream, like I was watching someone else do those things. I don't recognize the person who waited in that parking garage. I don't recognize the person who fired that gun, but I'm trying. I'm taking the classes they offer here. Anger management, cognitive behavioral therapy, all of it. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did, why I couldn't let go, why your rejection felt like the end of the world. My therapist says I have a fear of abandonment rooted in childhood trauma. My lawyer says I had a mental break. My parents say you drove me to it. I don't know what's true anymore. All I know is that I ruined my life and I ruined yours, and I can't take any of it back. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I hope you're happy. I hope you're living the life you wanted. I hope you never think about me. Daniel, I read it twice, then put it back in the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired. He still didn't get it. Even after a year of therapy, even after 25 years of consequence, he still framed it as something that happened to him, something he was driven to. something outside his control. He talked about accountability, but he still blamed his childhood, his mental health, me. I threw the letter away. 5 years passed. I was 33 years old, living in a city I loved, doing work I was proud of. I'd started my own design firm, small, just me and 2 employees, but it was mine. I had friends who knew my story and loved me anyway. I had a cat, a studio apartment with exposed brick and too many plants, a routine that felt safe and mine. I'd gone on more dates, had a few short relationships that ended amicably. Nothing serious. I wasn't sure I wanted serious. The idea of trusting someone that much again still felt impossible some days. But I was happy, or as close to happy as I could manage. My family and I had reached a sort of detente. I saw them on holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and we kept things surface level. My mother tried sometimes to go deeper, to apologize again, to rebuild what we'd lost. I let her try. I didn't help. James had gotten married. His wife, Lauren, was kind and didn't push. She treated me like a person rather than a puzzle to solve, and I appreciated that. My father never apologized. I didn't expect him to. He showed love through actions rather than words. He'd helped me move into my new apartment, had co-signed my business loan, had shown up when I needed him, even if he couldn't say the words I wanted to hear. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And then, 5 years after the sentencing, I got another letter from Daniel. This one was different. It was typed rather than handwritten, formal rather than emotional. Rachel, I'm writing to inform you that I'm up for parole next month. My lawyer thinks I have a good chance. I've been a model prisoner. I've completed all the rehabilitation programs. I have a job lined up on the outside. I'm required to notify you as part of the parole process. You have the right to submit a statement to the parole board. You have the right to attend the hearing. I want you to know that I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I've changed. I've grown. I understand now what I did, and I take full responsibility for it. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I am asking you to consider not opposing my parole. I've served my time. I've done the work. I'm ready to move on with my life, and I hope you are too. Daniel. I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking. Parole. After only 5 years. He'd been sentenced to 25, and they were considering letting him out after 5. I called Marcus immediately. He was at the DA's office now, a senior prosecutor, but he remembered my case. I was going to call you, he said. I just found out yesterday. I'm sorry, Rachel. With the overcrowding in the prisons, they're reviewing anyone who's been a model prisoner. He tried to kill me, I said. He violated a restraining order multiple times. He stalked me. He shot at me. And they're letting him out after 5 years? The parole board will consider all of that. And they'll consider your statement if you want to submit one. But Rachel, I need to be honest with you. He has a good shot at getting out. He's done everything right while he's been inside. No infractions, no problems. He looks rehabilitated on paper. On paper, I repeated. What about in reality? I don't know, Marcus admitted. No one does. That's the gamble with parole. I hung up and sat in silence for a long time. Then I pulled out my laptop and started writing my statement. The parole hearing was held on a cold Tuesday in November. I drove 2 hours to the prison, parked in the visitor lot, and walked into the administrative building with my statement printed and ready. The hearing room was small, a table, a few chairs, fluorescent lights. The parole board consisted of 3 people, 2 men and a woman, all middle-aged and tired-looking. Daniel sat across from them with his lawyer, wearing prison clothes and handcuffs. He looked older, his face was thinner, his hair graying at the temples, but his eyes were the same, intense, focused, calculating. When I walked in, those eyes locked on me. I didn't look away. Ms. Morrison, the chairwoman of the parole board said, "Thank you for coming. We've received your written statement, but you have the right to address the board in person if you wish." "I do," I said, and stood. I'd practiced this speech 100 times. In my car, in my apartment, with Dr. Winters. I knew every word by heart. 5 years ago, Daniel Brennan tried to kill me, I began. He violated a restraining order multiple times. He stalked me. He threatened me. He waited in a parking garage and shot at me. The bullet missed my head by inches. I looked at the board, not at Daniel. His letter to you says he's changed, that he's done the work, that he takes full responsibility. But I've heard those words before, after the assault, after the first violation, after the second. Each time he promised he'd changed. Each time he got worse. "Ms. Morrison," his lawyer began, but the chairwoman held up a hand. "Let her finish." "The thing about men like Daniel Brennan," I continued, "is that they're good at performing rehabilitation. They're good at saying the right things, taking the right classes, looking remorseful. But that doesn't mean they've changed. It means they've learned what to say to get what they want." I finally looked at Daniel. He stared back, his face unreadable. "If you release him, he'll come for me again. Maybe not right away, maybe not for months or years, but eventually, when he decides the time is right, he'll come for me because men like him don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are." I sat down. My hands were shaking, but my voice had been steady. The board asked Daniel a few questions about his therapy, his plans for employment, where he'd live if released. He answered perfectly, every word calculated to convince them he was safe. "I understand Miss Morrison's fear," he said at one point. "I truly do, but I'm not the same person I was. I've spent 5 years examining my actions, understanding the harm I caused. I know I can never undo what I did, but I can commit to never doing it again." He sounded sincere. If I didn't know better, I might have believed him. The board deliberated for 30 minutes. Then they delivered their decision. Parole denied. "Mr. Brennan, while you've made progress during your incarceration, the board feels you need more time to demonstrate sustained behavioral change. The violent nature of your crime, combined with the pattern of escalation prior to your arrest, raises concerns about public safety. We'll review your case again in 2 years." Daniel's face went blank. Then just for a second, I saw it. The flash of rage quickly suppressed. The mask slipping. The board saw it too. I watched the chairwoman's expression harden. "Bailiff, please escort Mr. Brennan back to his cell." As they led him away, he looked at me one last time. And I saw the truth in his eyes. He blamed me. Still. Always. I drove home in a daze, pulled over at a rest stop halfway back, and cried for 20 minutes. Not from fear, from relief. 2 more years. At least 2 more years of safety. Dr. Winters had warned me that this might happen, that the parole process could be re-traumatizing, that each hearing would bring it all back. She'd offered to increase our sessions if I needed it. I called her from the parking lot. "He didn't get parole." "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I can breathe again. Like I have 2 more years to live my life, without looking over my shoulder." "That's good, Rachel. That's really good." We talked for a few more minutes, and then I drove home. I stopped at the grocery store, bought ingredients for pasta, and cooked myself dinner. I opened a bottle of wine, lit candles, put on music. I celebrated being alive. The parole hearings became a pattern, every 2 years like clockwork. Daniel was denied at year 7, denied at year 9, denied at year 11. Each time I submitted a statement, each time I attended the hearing, each time I watched the board see through his performance of rehabilitation, and each time I saw the rage flash in his eyes when they denied him. By year 13, I was 41 years old. I'd sold my design firm for enough money to take a year off and travel. I'd been to Italy, Japan, Iceland, places I'd only dreamed about in my first life. I'd published a book, a memoir about surviving domestic violence, about rebuilding after trauma. It hadn't been a bestseller, but it had helped people. I got letters from readers thanking me for telling my story. I'd dated, fallen in love twice, had my heart broken once. I'd learned that trust was possible again, even if it was harder than it used to be. I'd built a life. At the year 13 hearing, something was different. Daniel looked older, frailer. Prison had aged him. His hair was fully gray now, his face lined and gaunt. When it was my turn to speak, I stood and realized I'd said everything I needed to say over the years. The board knew my story. They knew his pattern. They knew the risk. "I don't have anything new to add," I said. I just want to live my life without fear. That's all I've ever wanted." The board deliberated for only 10 minutes this time. Parole denied, review in 5 years. 5 years, the longest gap yet. Maybe they were finally seeing what I'd seen all along. At year 18, I was 46 years old. I'd remarried, a kind man named Thomas who knew my whole story and loved me anyway. We had a small house outside the city, a garden I spent hours tending, 2 rescue dogs who slept on our bed. I hadn't thought about Daniel in months, hadn't checked the prison records, hadn't worried about parole dates. I'd moved on. And then I got the notification. His next parole hearing was scheduled for December. And this time, the preliminary recommendation from his caseworker was approval. I called Marcus, now the district attorney. I saw, he said, Rachel, I'm going to be honest with you. 18 years is a long time. He's in his late 40s now. He has no infractions on his record. The system is designed for rehabilitation and reintegration. They're going to let him out eventually. What if he comes for me? I asked. Then we arrest him. We prosecute him. We put him back in prison. What if he kills me first? Silence. Rachel, Marcus said finally, I can't promise you that won't happen. I wish I could. But the best I can do is make sure that system is watching him. Make sure he knows that any violation, any contact will send him back inside immediately. It wasn't enough, but it was all he had. I went to the hearing. Thomas came with me, holding my hand in the waiting room. The board looked different, all new members, none of them familiar with my case beyond the files. They asked their questions. Daniel answered perfectly, as always. But this time, when they asked about his plans if released, he had details. A job lined up at a car wash, an apartment arranged through a halfway house, a sponsor from his therapy group. He'd done the work, real work this time, not just the performance of it. Ms. Morrison, would you like to make a statement? The chairwoman asked. I stood. I'd written something, but looking at Daniel now, older, grayer, supposedly rehabilitated, the words seemed hollow. I've been coming to these hearings for 18 years, I said instead. 18 years of telling you the same story. 18 years of asking you to keep me safe. And for 18 years you have, but I know I can't ask that forever. I took a breath. If you release him, I'm asking for one thing. Make sure he knows that any contact with me, any violation of the restraining order, any attempt to find me or hurt me, will put him back in prison for the rest of his life. Make sure he knows I'm not someone he can revisit. Make sure he knows that chapter is closed. The board nodded. They deliberated for an hour. Parole approved, with conditions. He'd be released in 30 days. He'd be on supervised parole for 7 years. He was prohibited from coming within 1,000 feet of me or my home. Any violation would result in immediate reincarceration. I walked out of that hearing feeling numb. Thomas drove us home. I sat in the passenger seat and watched the world go by and tried to process that Daniel Brennan was going to be free in a month. We could move, Thomas offered. Sell the house, start over somewhere new. He won't know where to find us. I thought about it, about running, about spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. No, I said. I'm not running from him again. This is my life. My home. If he comes near me, the police will handle it. Thomas squeezed my hand. Okay, then we stay and we live. Daniel was released on January 15th. I got the notification from the Victim Services Office along with a list of his parole conditions and his parole officer's contact information. I saved the information and tried to go on with my life. A week passed, then 2, then a month. Nothing happened. No contact, no sightings, no violations. Maybe he really had changed. Maybe 18 years in prison had taught him something, or maybe he was just biding his time. I went back to therapy with a new therapist now, Dr. Winters, having retired years ago. I talked about the anxiety, the hypervigilance, the way I jumped at every sound. You've been living with this for almost 2 decades, Dr. Simmons said. It's going to take time to accept that it might really be over. Might be, I repeated. That's the problem. It might be over, or it might not be. You can't live your life waiting for the other shoe to drop, she said gently. At some point, you have to decide to trust that you're safe. But I died once. I knew that safety was an illusion. 3 months after his release, Daniel violated his parole. Not by coming near me, not by contacting me directly, but by accessing social media, something explicitly prohibited in his parole conditions. His parole officer did a random check and found Facebook and Instagram apps on his phone. When they checked the accounts, they found he'd been lurking, Not posting, just scrolling, looking at profiles. Mine was one of them. He'd looked at my profile 17 times in 3 months. Looked at my photos, my posts, my check-ins at restaurants and parks and vacation spots. He'd been watching me. His parole officer called me personally to tell me, "Ms. Morrison, I want you to know this is a serious violation. We're recommending he be returned to custody." "For how long?" I asked. "It depends on the judge. But given the nature of his original crime and the specific prohibition against any form of contact or surveillance, I'd expect at least 5 years." 5 years? He'd be in his 50s when he got out next time. And I'd be in my 50s. Living my life. Refusing to let him take any more of it from me. The parole violation hearing was quick. Daniel's lawyer tried to argue it was a minor infraction, that his client had simply been curious about my well-being. The judge wasn't buying it. "Mr. Brennan, you were explicitly told not to seek out information about Ms. Morrison in any form. You were told that any attempt to monitor or contact her would be considered a violation. You chose to disregard that order. This demonstrates a continued fixation on the victim and suggests you haven't actually rehabilitated." "Your Honor, I wasn't trying to contact her," Daniel protested. "I just wanted to see that she was okay." "You wanted to surveil her," the judge corrected. "You wanted to keep tabs on her. You wanted to maintain a connection that she has spent 19 years trying to sever. That is not rehabilitation, Mr. Brennan. That is stalking." She sentenced him to 5 years. 5 more years. I walked out of that courthouse and felt something I hadn't felt in 2 decades. Freedom. I'm 51 years old now. Daniel is 57, still in prison. His next parole hearing is in 3 years, and I've already prepared my statement. But I'm not afraid anymore. Not the way I used to be. I've lived an entire life in the shadow of what he did and what he might do. I've built a career, a marriage, a home. I've survived and thrived, not because he's in prison, but because I refused to let him take anything else from me. If he gets out in 3 years, I'll deal with it. If he violates his parole again, I'll deal with that too. If he comes for me, I'll be ready, because I died once. And I came back, and I changed my story. The restraining order I refused to drop, the one they all pressured me to abandon, saved my life. The system I trusted to protect me, flawed and imperfect as it is, held when I needed it to. And Daniel Brennan, who thought he could control me through fear and violence, has spent 23 years learning that he can't. They forced me to drop the restraining order in my first life. In this one, I kept it. And when he violated it again and again and again, he faced the consequences. 23 years and counting. That's justice. That's survival. That's me, living the life he tried to take from me, refusing to give him one more moment of power. I'm alive. And that's the greatest revenge of all.